And on behalf of GAM, we're delighted to bring you this webcast in partnership with the 2010 National Environmental Health and Safety Conference. At GAM, we've been writing pretty steadily about the movement in the printing and graphics industries to reduce environmental impact and increase social responsibility. That's something that we call sustainability. The pressure to become sustainable is here to stay. If your company hasn't developed a sustainability plan of action, this webcast could be your chance to learn a bit more about it and to actually hear from printers that are setting the pace in this area. You'll get some insights into what leading-edge printers are doing to be sustainable, how they've engaged their workforces in the process, and importantly, what it's doing for their business, both in terms of cutting costs and also appealing to clients. Before we begin, a few logistics about how this whole process works. Your phones have been automatically muted to avoid extraneous noise, and we will not be taking verbal questions or comments today. Instead, send us your questions via the chat feature in the lower right part of your screen. Type your comments in the box and click Send. They'll appear on my screen and those of the presenters. Since we have about 300 people online with us today, we may not be able to field every question submitted, but we'll get to as many as we can. If later on you'd like to have colleagues listen in to what you heard presented today, you can direct them to our website, graphicartsonline.com, and navigate to the webcast panel, or you can also go to nehsconference.org. We should have the webcast posted up in a couple of days. Sorry, I've advanced a couple. Today's conference, our webcast, is also a preview of the March 15 through 17 conference in Indianapolis. This annual event has been taking place for 15 years. And while it's principally focused on sustainability, there are plenty of sessions that you'll find of interest in other areas of your business. There are sessions on calculating your carbon footprint, developing sustainability management systems, learning how to engage employees in safety initiatives, energy management, dealing with sustainable substrates, and almost 20 other topics. Presenters even include some big printing customers, firms like Subaru and Eli Lilly, where sustainable production of printing and packaging is a major concern. Registration fees are very affordable, so I encourage you to give thought to joining other proactive companies in Indianapolis, March 15 through 17. You can register it or learn more at nehsconference.org. Today's moderator is Gary Jones, and it's my pleasure to introduce Gary. He's Director of Environmental Health and Safety at the Printing Industries of America. Gary Jones is one of the people that has done the most to alert the industry to the importance of the sustainability movement. Gary's primary responsibility is to monitor and analyze environmental health and safety regulation activities at all governmental levels. Gary Jones and his staff also assist member companies with a range of services, including applying for air pollution permits, complying with OSHA regulations, and waste minimization. Gary was a driving force in the creation of the Sustainable Green Printing Partnership, an organization that certifies printing companies on the basis of their sustainability activities. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. And for those of you out on the West Coast, I think it's going to be a good morning to you. I'm very pleased to be here today with our program, and I'm very excited that the program that we put together today for you, we spent a considerable amount of time in terms of the thought process, I guess, the architecture, the agenda, and we've got some excellent panelists that I'll be introducing in a short bit that we are going to prompt them with some questions, and then we're going to open it up for the audience questions. And I hope you brought your questions with you, because we've got some excellent success stories with our printer panelists. What I'm going to do very briefly is talk, first of all, about the green marketplace. And, of course, the burning question that we have is the green marketplace there? And the answer is yes. Based on the response and questions that we get here at the association from our members, I would say that even though we've had the downturn in the economy, and, of course, everyone's concerned about survivability in business and things like that, our customer base out there, this has been growing. And I would say on average we get 1-2 questions a week from a member that has been asked by their customer to present some type of green credential. And they want them to either be certified, or they want to see a copy of their success story, they want to see a copy of their sustainable management policy, environmental policy. We know that Walmart, for example, we know they released about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, the scorecard, which had significant changes in the packaging segment of our industry. But then this year they released, or end of 2009, they released the Sustainability Index, which is a whole series of criteria that they're using to evaluate their customers. Of course, there's national and international pressure from the green environmental groups, and there are bigger, broader issues that they want to tackle. We know carbon from climate change, global warming is on the tips of folks' minds. In fact, I had an inquiry from one of our members this week where they were doing their carbon footprint, and they wanted to know how their carbon footprint compared to other printers' carbon footprint. And it's just amazing in terms of, to me, the breadth of this whole issue of sustainability. Water footprinting is also on the emerging front. And actually, at the end of last week, I got an email that you may be familiar with the Ceres project, where they did the carbon disclosure, where they asked large companies what their carbon footprints were. Now there's a group out there surveying big customers, large Fortune 500 companies, about what's something called their forest footprint. So again, this is an emerging issue in terms of paper procurement, paper sourcing types of issues. So again, is the market there? I'd say yes. And I think as the economy recovers, and if you believe the economists, we are in a turnaround, where I think it's going to become a critical issue moving forward. So what is sustainable printing? What does it really mean? Well, for the commercial printers, it's more than just recycled paper and soy inks. For all printers, it's basically a holistic approach to all your business activities. It's a way to reduce overall environmental impact, looking for reductions in toxics and waste, incorporating more renewable resources, and this is key. Of course, reducing fossil fuel and energy consumption. From an operations perspective, it's a continuous improvement process. And as we titled of this program, The Journey to Sustainability, it is clearly a journey. It is something that it's not a single event, such as becoming FSC certified, but it's a combination of many ongoing activities where you're continuously looking for opportunities. And you'll see from our panelists, they've got great accomplishments, but yet they're not done. They're still looking for additional opportunities to reduce that overall environmental footprint. And I think most importantly, it's not greenwashing. It has to be credible. You have to have you have to be transparent in terms of the story that you tell your customers, the story that you tell your stakeholders, the story that you tell your employees, your actions. You have to document them, and you have to make sure that it's going to withstand scrutiny. Sustainable printing, how do I respond from a company perspective? Well, from the printing perspective, sustainability involves 3 key issues. The first is the product, and the product is basically design aspects, and then, of course, the input materials, paper, inks, coatings, adhesives, substrates. Is it recyclable? Is it non-recyclable? What's the environmental impact of the input material? Then we have the process. That's the pre-press, press, and post-press operations. And then, of course, the envelope, which is everything that goes to support the printing and the product issue. That's building grounds, maintenance, employees, energy consumption. There are tremendous opportunities in terms of sustainability, and you got to look at all 3 of them. And of course, the last question is, how do I become sustainable? How do I do it? Well, the 2 words that I like to use when I talk with our members is that, first of all, you have to be systematic. What does that mean? Basically, you need an organized approach to identify, prioritize, and take actions on opportunities. And then you have to set goals and measure your progress. Obviously, if you don't have goals and you don't have metrics, and metrics are going to be very important, you don't know where you're at or what you've been able to achieve, and then how does that translate into some reduction in environmental impact. systematic. You have to engage all the employees. What you hear from our panelists is that they have got the entire workforce engaged in their program, and that is the key to success. You need a plan. You need everyone in the facility who has a role, and everyone does have a role, understand their role, and offer suggestions and take actions. And of course, you apply the 3 R's, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Applying that very simple question to all your activities, how can I reduce, how can I reuse, and how can I recycle materials, will uncover tremendous opportunities for you to not only save costs, but reduce your overall environmental footprint. And for those of you that like to look at lean manufacturing, when you look at lean and green practices, these two were just made for each other. So if you're moving towards implementing these green practices, look towards implementing lean manufacturing, because the two go hand in glove, and they are very powerful when you look at the opportunities that lean manufacturing can bring and can uncover from operations all the way from the beginning to the end, from the loading dock out to the parking lot, so to speak. So enough from me. Let's talk about our panelists very quickly here. Let me introduce our panelists. We're very pleased to have Michelle Donahue, who's the VP of Administration for Global Packaging. We have Wally Jones, Director of Environmental Operations for Consolidated Printing in Chicago, and Deanne Strinke, Marketing Director for Modernistic. Now, we know that sustainability isn't isolated to just one type of printing operation or one type of product. So our panelists represent commercial printer, a screen printing, screen digital printing, and as well as a flexible packaging manufacturer. So we've covered the breadth of the bulk of the products that are produced in our industry, and we're very excited to have our panelists join us today. And what we'll do at this point is we're going to have each of them take a moment to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll go through a series of questions, and we'll open it up for your questions. Michelle.
Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Donahue. I'm with Global Packaging in Oaks, Pennsylvania. We're located about an hour and a half west of Philadelphia. We are a full-service flexographic printer and converter. We've been in business since 1948. We have 160 employees. We operate 24 hours a day, 355 days a year. We specialize in the use of low linear density polyethylene film, which is our substrate. We don't print on paper, we print on plastic film. We make roll stock, that is, we send the printed rolls out to our customers for them to manufacture at their plant, or we make converted bags, typically for personal care products, such as diaper bags, incontinence packaging, feminine care packaging, also for bakery, confectionery, and pet food markets. We've used lean manufacturing and pollution prevention efforts at least since 1997. We've certainly documented the use since 1997. Some of the things we've done so far, we use zero water in our manufacturing process, therefore we have zero wastewater discharge. We've had energy audits in 2008, and in 2009 we won an award from the Department of Energy for our energy savings. We were certified as a sustainable green printer in March of 2009. We're the first wide web flexo printer in the country to be certified, and we're very proud of that achievement. It really took all of our employees working together to reach that goal and to maintain that goal. As a sustainable green printer, we're required to have a goal that we publicize and work towards and report on. Our goal for our first year, which was calendar 2009, was to reduce our scrap film by 1%. We also wanted to reduce our cardboard core use by 7%. So I'll show you the results. In 1 year's time, we've been able to reduce core purchases by 80%. We've saved $37,000. And really the net effect of what I'm presenting today is over $105,000 in savings achieved in 1 year. We've had more savings from an operational perspective, but this is what we can quantify at this moment. We've reduced our scrap film by 62,655 pounds, or 0.7%. And a lot of that has been through working with employees, things like setup reduction on our presses, looking at using existing rolls of film and slitting them down to smaller sizes for our customers. A lot of operational changes went into reducing that scrap number. We're really excited to tell you that we've saved 402,000 kilowatt hours of energy because we added 4 new machines when we did that. We added 3 new bag machines, bringing our total up to 14 machines, and we added a very large air handler to improve plant air quality. In total, we recycled 735 tons of materials in 2009. Of that, 92 tons was previously unrecycled material, so that's quite an achievement also. We're currently using construction and demolition debris from one building to build a parking lot. We're building on a very large expansion, 24,000 square feet, and we are designing that with sustainable practices in mind. What this allows us to do, all of these savings, allow us to pass the savings on to our customers and also reinvest in our business. The second half of the year, we started some new projects. As I mentioned, we had a 1% scrap goal. We have a sustainability committee that's been very, very active, and our employees have wonderful suggestions to make our business more efficient. We've begun putting those practices into place right away. Some of the things we've done is recycled 136,000 pounds of solvent for reuse in our operations. That saved us $15,000. As a result of doing that, we also reduced our total hazardous waste by 62,000 pounds. We're a large quantity generator, and that's a major achievement for us. We were also able to recycle spools from our customers, saving $52,000. We send out plastic bags that are often packaged with spools holding the bags together, and we're getting those back from customers and reusing them. One of the new materials we recycled was end boards in plastic caps from our raw film shipments. We recycled 24 tons so far, avoiding $666 in landfilling costs if we had landfilled those. We're also considering sustainability with new purchases. We purchased a new single chiller that replaces 3 older, less efficient machines. And our new bag machines and patch machine use less energy, and they're going to have better setup reduction for us as we go forward. And now I'll turn it over to Consolidated.
Thank you. My name is Walter Jones, Consolidated Printing Company. We're a general commercial printer. We're not a big printer. We're small. And we were established in 1973. Our journey for sustainability started back then when we started doing work for a vitamin manufacturer. And he taught us that whatever you eat, breathe, touch, smell, whatever, it affects your body and affects your employees. So we went about trying to change this. Previous to meeting him, I myself have been in the trade for 50 years now, and when I first got into it, I never met a printer that wasn't sick or had all his fingers or whatever, you know. So we knew that there were things that could be done, but we didn't know what to do. So we started out by purchasing and eliminating chemicals that we could actually buy in a supermarket, like vinegar and Pam and things of that nature. As we went along, we made our intentions known to suppliers of inks and chemicals and became beta sites through the years for everything from ink to wash-up solutions and fountain solutions and things of that nature. So one of our first things that we did was we decided that we had to get rid of the alcohol in our process. Now, alcohol is a big polluter as far as the environment is concerned, but it's also a product that causes things like brain damage, memory loss, and what have you. So about 20 years ago, we were able to eliminate all alcohol from our system. We progressed along, and then in the 90s, the Illinois EPA came up with what they call the Clean Break program. And they asked for printers to come in. It's kind of like turning over all your income tax returns to the IRS and saying, here, take it and investigate me. Well, that's exactly what we had to do with the Illinois EPA. When they had about 8 people that came out, they tested everything, including taking water from sewers around the shop to make sure we weren't dumping or anything. And as it came back, we were told that we were far surpassing anything that they had even known of at the time. They also asked us if we would make a film with them, which we did, trying to get other printers to do what we did. It didn't work too well, but then they started the Illinois Great Printers Project, which meant that you had to have transparency and you had to try to get as many environmental and safety things in place as you possibly could. We were named #1 in the state of Illinois for the environmental grade printers project. Again, asked to go around with the Illinois EPA and try to get other printers and actually at that time also body shops to try to do some of the things that we did. And the program, we had 5,800 grade printers, 5,800 printers in the state of Illinois back then, and we only ended up with 58 great printers. Many of those municipalities like the state of Illinois print shop and the Illinois EPA print shop. So we at that point we still weren't where we wanted to be. We were still using petroleum and things of that nature. So we set ourselves up as a beta site for many different companies and progressed to eliminating much of the petroleum that we were using and to go to soy-based inks, which was a stepping stone to getting to where we are today. Soy ink is still contains approximately 50% petroleum plus heavy metals and things of that nature. So we felt that we needed to go much further than that. We earned 3 awards from the Governor's Pollution Prevention program and also from Mayor Daley's Green Works programs along the way. As we were certified SGP in 2009. As we went along, we found that we needed to eliminate all of the petroleum in the shop, all carcinogens, all heavy metals. It took us quite some time, and we finally got to the point we are today. We have all vegetable-based inks, pigments, and everything do not contain heavy metals, do not contain any petroleum. The wash-ups that we use are from bean and seed esters from American farms. We've eliminated fuser oils, silver. We recycle pretty much everything in the shop, all the way down to batteries that you have in your mouse on your computer. So we found a place to recycle just about everything. And that's where we're at today.
Excellent, excellent. Deanne, can you take us through your success story?
Sure. Modernistics, a third-generation privately held company that specializes in large format screen printing, digital printing, die cutting, plastic fabrication, sewing, kitting, fulfillment, primarily for the point-of-purchase industry, but also for fleet graphics and OEM graphics. We're approximately a half hour east of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and we've been in business since 1938, originally starting as a die-cutting company at that time and have grown to where we're at today. Our capabilities are all under one roof out here in Stillwater, Minnesota, and we were SGP certified back in December of last year of 2009. We were the second large format screen printer to do so. So that was a pretty great fulfillment for us. In the process of moving out to our facility here, we were able to do many reductions of different things in this larger facility. The biggest thing that we did over 2008 and 2009 was reducing our electricity. And we did that by replacing the old lighting that was in our facility with compact modular high-intensity fluorescent bulbs. And the reduction was immense. It cut our electricity costs by 64%, which was a huge savings on the bottom line. And in doing so is kind of one of the things that prompted us to, what else can we do? Take a look around. By doing that and some other things, we received an award from our energy supplier as an efficiency partner status, and we also received another environmental stewardship award. For the future in SGP, every year you have to have a continuous improvement project, and ours going forward is to try to reduce our electricity use by kilowatt hours by another 10%. So we have to take a serious look around and see what we can do, and we're doing that by looking at closing, or we have remote controls on lights, so we can close off different areas in the plant to shut down lights when we're not working in a certain area and things remotely. So we also have installed many timers on our lighting so that if there's no motion or whatnot, it'll shut down that. Also in the process, we've recycled a majority amount of our waste. That's something we just did as we moved to this facility, and as we started SGP and looking around, we produce a lot of different materials that aren't maybe necessarily environmentally friendly, like a corrugated or whatnot cardboard. So we started looking around and recycling everything that was trying to recycle everything that's going into a dumpster. So in that process over the course of the year are where these statistics came. A lot of the plastic waste that we use on substrates material is what we started to find a vendor that could take our plastic banding, our shrink wrap, the from bubbles that are produced for packaging, plastic cores and different things that Michelle and Wally have talked about, we also recycled. And in that course, 331 tons of waste did not go in the landfill last year. So that's a bit about Modernistic. Back to you, Gary.
About these, thanks, Deanna. I think there's a couple observations to make about the success stories. A couple of things. Number one, obviously it's not isolated to one type of printing or one type of product, but as Wally had mentioned, their company is relatively small, and Modernistic is a medium size, and Michelle Global Packaging is a larger size company. So again, it really cuts across all the different types of print processes as well as the size of the company. And I think to some extent it's more about the approach and attitude that you take more so than the size of your company, because I do get that question a lot. To get the questions and answers started, what I'd like to do is kick us off with our very first question. We've got 3 questions to ask our panelists. I think some of the common questions that we get, or I hear a lot when I give presentations, and I want to jumpstart those, and then we can turn it over to your questions. So the first question for our panelists is, how did you get your employees and management on board, or how did you get them involved? Wally, you want to lead us off with that one?
Sure. Well, when you explain to the employees exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it, they pretty much get on board. But then training that they had in other shops and everything starts to, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I use a little bit of alcohol here? And you got to keep emphasizing why you're doing it. Just like one of our first things that we did was we realized that petroleum products are heavier than air, so they go along the ground. So in order to be expelled out of the building with the big air handlers in the roof, they had to mix with the air, become as light as air, and then saturate all the whole building. Well, we looked around and we purchased the Duster 3000, which picks up all petroleum products down on the ground level, and it goes through chemical filters, and it comes out approximately 85% cleaner air, and it's released inside the building, not outside, to have a problem as far as the atmosphere is concerned. But our employees, once they get the feeling that they realize that they're feeling better, and their absenteeism is cut down, they realize that all the different things that we've done are for their benefit. The elimination of petroleum products, which attacks target organs in their bodies and stuff, and none of this is happening anymore. So now they don't want to do without it. So, but it's been a challenge.
Okay, Michelle.
Yes, our employees have been very involved from the beginning. One of the key points for us is our president sent an invitation to every single employee telling them about our sustainability committee and inviting them to participate. We then had a core group of employees that we got together, and we made the sustainability bulletin board where we post the quarterly minutes. We post ideas that came from employees, what we've implemented, what our progress has been. We also established a green email box, and employees can send emails there, or members of the community can send emails. We have a lot of folks who stop us in the hall and say, hey, did you think about this? The CEO of our company has breakfast with employees once a month, and he's gotten a lot of great ideas for that. So what we found is that employees have great ideas. They are the ones doing the jobs. They often think of ways to reduce setup waste, things to recycle. Actually, the core recycling project was an employee suggestion. A guy said, you know, why don't we cut down the cores that come in instead of buying more cores to ship out our products? You know, sticky back, we use a lot of sticky back, and somebody recently had an idea, you know, why don't we buy it in different sizes so we have less waste? Sticky back recycling, we get plastic end caps with those, and one of the employees said, hey, you know, why aren't you recycling those to recycle other plastics? 15 minutes later, we had a cardboard box that had a label on it. We had made a connection with purchasing, got an existing vendor to take that waste, and the employee saw, hey, they're really serious. They really care about my ideas. And we publicize whatever accomplishments we have and whose idea it was. So for us, it's been phenomenal.
And Deanne?
Very similar to Michelle, we were able to get a core group of people together that was really excited to work together to implement sustainable efforts in our manufacturing facility, as well as our management team just super excited to move forward with this to increase efficiency and make changes to lower our operational costs. Based on having a energy audit was where we came out with putting in new plant lighting and thus the incredible savings on the bottom line of our operational costs just for electricity. What else can we do? So everybody kind of working together to implement those, and so many people in the plant that are excited to figure or recommend ideas in their operations of daily activities to make a savings on the bottom line, or in many cases where we're recycling materials that we're actually getting paid for, or reducing the size or quantity of things so that we're saving money on our initial investment for materials or getting money back for materials that we're recycling.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, again, I think that gets back to one of the slides we had at the beginning, which is the key in terms of the program is you need both management and employees involved in the program from the beginning. Let's move on to our next question. And this is a question I think we get in many different forms in many different ways. I hear it expressed, you know, what does it cost? You know, how's it going to cost? What's it going to cost me, and how am I going to recoup those costs? I understand, you know, there's a lot of cost or perhaps potential cost associated with this, and I think that's really somewhat of a misnomer. So I'd like to have our panelists address this one. In what ways do you see return on your investment in sustainability? And we'll kick this one off with Michelle.
Sure, Gary. We have seen a huge return on investment, and first of all, we have not made a giant investment in terms of dollars. You know, we contacted our plant trash hauler. We said we want to be recycling cans and bottles. You know, we got a separate container for that. We are not spending a lot of dollars for that container. We're using cardboard gaylords like you see in the slides to collect our scrap film and our other plastics on our end boards. We're not using special containers. We didn't spend a lot of money putting things in place. We simply connected with our existing suppliers. The solvent that we are recycling, we went to our chemical supplier and said, you know, we've got this big waste stream and we don't know how to handle it. And our auditor, when we became SGP certified, said, you know, have you taken a look at different things you can do with that? So we started having conversations with our vendors, and through those partnerships, we were able to find low-cost solutions. We're not spending any more money necessarily for that to be done. We're actually saving money because we're saving $1.60 a gallon on that return solvent, even considering the transportation costs, even considering the distillation costs. So a lot of it's cost avoidance. We're also doing things like backhauling. You know, we'll take a shipment to a customer and then we'll bring back spools or other supplies that we can reuse in the operation. So if anybody thinks they need a giant checkbook to start these programs, you really don't. What you need is the ideas, the communication. You need to have conversations with your vendors. And just in this short time, we've saved over $100,000. Certainly, we've had more savings from an operational perspective. We've streamlined some of our operational activities, and those are things that are really hard to quantify in terms of dollars, but wonderful to qualify in terms of employee morale. If it's easier for somebody to do their job, if they see there's a change, if they see we're invested in them, we're invested in the business, it makes a really big difference.
And Deanne, what about your return on investment?
Yeah, I mean, here's a couple of photos on the slide that came from our facility, and clearly, as Michelle stated, we didn't invest any money in making containers to recycle stuff. We basically took Gaylords and we put some signs on them, and there you go. And the exciting thing for us is to just even see employees that are slapping signs on Gaylords that maybe aren't the same ones that I created, just have a kind of unique look. But just a huge amount of money has been saved on our landfill costs, on what is getting hauled out of our trash compactor and now is being recycled. It's just been amazing. So the only time that we've actually invested money was to, create a couple of fancier trash cans in the offices area. But it's just been amazing. One of our ink lab people were talking about, well, how can we recycle these ink pails? And that was a very similar thing where these were going into the dumpster, and we found out from our plastic recycler that if we, scraped them the best we could and then stacked them up and removed the metal handles, we were able to recycle all of those, thus saving a bunch of plastic that was going into the trash can and going into the landfill. Now is being recycled and putting back into the to be repurposed. So.
And Wally, I think you have a unique perspective on this.
Well, years ago, there was a lot of cost involved in sustainability, but today you can make money. I mean, because like we recycle all of our paper and cardboard waste, and we get paid for it. The same thing with aluminum plates. We get paid for that, and it's so much a pound, and they don't have to have it hauled. They haul it. They bring in their own Gaylords, and you don't have to purchase any of that stuff. Years ago, it used to cost us a lot of money as far as the extra for the inks we used and the wash-up solutions we used, but it's all coming into line today. So there's more benefit, I believe, to doing this than to not doing it. I mean, and power, that's another source. I mean, we've saved up to 30% on our power over what we were a couple of years ago by doing things like putting in all T8 lighting in the shop. And one of the biggest things, and what we're trying to really get out to people, is there's a very simple way to help the global warming issues and whatever else you want to call it. Exit signs. We went and we're not a big shop, so we don't have a lot of exit signs, but what we had, we're using 57 watts of power 24/7. We replaced them with LED lights, which are using 1.4 watts. Now, if you start thinking about the big companies, big shops, hospitals, schools, they all just did that, you'd have a 97%, approximately 97% savings in power for the country.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's move on to our last question. And what I'd like to do, since we have questions rolling in here, is maybe each of our panelists could quickly summarize their thoughts on this one, and we can jump into the question. So obviously, this is the other one. The other side of this is your customers. How do your efforts resonate with your customer base? And Deanne, do you want to lead us off on that one? And if I stress to you guys, maybe just keep your remarks short so we can get to the questions. Deanne?
The majority of our customers are thrilled to be aligned with a partner that is gives back to the environment. And as a point-of-purchase supplier, there are many of our customers that are department stores and they are utilizing lead initiatives for signage that we're producing on green materials and whatnot, and they're just thrilled to ask for materials to be sourced that are green, and by doing this, we've been able to change a lot of programs over into more environmentally friendly substrates, which has saved costs for many of our customers as well as them being able to recycle the substrates.
Excellent. Michelle?
We find that this opens a lot of doors for us. Our existing customers are very interested. They're very aware. They're multinational companies. And we find that it opens doors to new business with companies that, you know, are into sustainability, they're into organic, and it's a good opportunity.
And Wally?
And the same with us. We've come up with a lot of different organizations that we do work for and everything, and they just don't want to do anything with anybody who is not sustainable, and so they seek us out.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, and I would say that, you know, that's a common theme that I hear a lot from the printers that have gone the sustainability green route, is that the customers are really, to some extent, seeking them out once they understand the commitment and reputation of the company. Yeah. Okay. Time for your questions on the audience, and I see someone in the back that has their hand up, so let's go with that first question. This is an open question to all the panelists. Was there a need to hire employees in conjunction with your sustainability program, or did responsibilities migrate to existing positions?
We did not hire anyone at Global Packaging. We absorbed it within the company, and it hasn't been so much work that that's been a problem.
Same here. I'm in marketing, so I mean it's kind of wearing a couple different hats, and just everybody excited to participate along with their current responsibilities.
I can't actually add to that. Same here.
So really, nobody had to add any staff to do this. It just became someone becoming a central point, correct? And then distributing out the responsibilities from that point.
Yes,
correct.
Exactly.
All right. Have any of our panelists, calculated their carbon footprint? That's a good question, since I threw that out there at the beginning.
We have at Global. We last calculated it about a year ago. We're getting set to calculate it again.
Modernistic, we have not. We do have the formula to do it, but it has been one of those things that we haven't been able to get all of the pieces to get that number.
And at Consolidated, we have not either. We just pretty much know where we're at. We haven't calculated it.
And there's a second part to the question. Maybe this would be for Michelle, since you guys had already done it. Is it a worthwhile project, worthwhile exercise, I think is the question.
That depends. It's not required for sustainable green printing certification. I think it's a company decision, and every company has to decide for themselves.
Yeah, and I would say, based on my experience, is that the questions that we get from our members who are asked about carbon footprint, it's usually driven by a customer request, more so than anything else. It's a customer that's requesting that information about carbon footprinting, and it's not a common question, but it's not as rare as you might think. It's not one we get every day, but we do get it occasionally. All right, next question. Do you find your end user customers are beginning to mandate sustainability certification, such as SGP or FSC?
I'll start with that and say yes. There's many people that not so much mandate, but they're trying to find a vendor that's going to be certified in some element or form, and if you're not certified, you're not even being allowed to bid on the project.
Oh, interesting. Michelle?
We also have some customers who specifically look for us to be sustainable. I can't say that we've been mandated to have it, but I can tell you from looking at bid requests that it's an important component of the bidding process.
And Wally, any comments on that one?
Yeah, many times now when we get bid requests, it's specified that they want you to be sustainable and they want you to be able to prove it.
And then do they actually then, through the bid process, they ask you for supporting information to back up your claims?
Well, they do, because we do a lot of work for things like park districts and what have you, and they want to be sure that of who they're dealing with, and that you're not greenwashing and just turning around and saying, "Oh, I do this and I do that," but you have to be able to prove it, and you have to be transparent.
All right, we have another question here. This one I think might be for Michelle because it deals with pressure-sensitive waste. What do you do with it other than to toss it in the dumpster? And the problem seems to be the adhesive in the silicone liner.
Right. We've not yet found a recycler for it. I should say we've had some bites on it. The problem was that we didn't have enough quantity to really be attractive to the recycler. We are exploring it. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone yesterday with a company in western Pennsylvania that wants to take a look at it. Should we find a source, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, and I would say the answer to this one is, I believe, and I could be wrong, but there's a company called Channel Resources run by Calvin Frost, who was a speaker at one of our keynote speakers at the National Environmental Health and Safety Conference, and I believe his company does take that material and recycles it. So, in fact, I think two people had asked that question. I believe I have an email in my reference. If you can shoot me an email, I'll forward that to you. That has some ideas, I think, for that. But again, I think it is a difficult waste stream to recycle, and people are struggling with it. Now, is the question, and this is kind of, I think, a really good one, is what resources did each of you use to begin, I guess, your sustainability journey, and what do you use to continue that journey?
Well, I'll fire off. SGIA was our biggest resource in order to get SGB certified. You know, they were on the committee. They helped write all of the criteria, so they are familiar with it. And those kind of partners, your associations, are the people that are going to be able to help you get through that process. Because I have to say, I couldn't have done it without Marcy Kinner over at SGIA. She was a huge help. And just kind of wading through all the materials, because the criteria and things that you look at can get a little daunting because it's kind of like an ISO review. So SGIA was my kind of go-to association.
I can second that. For global, we used FTA. Doreen Monteleone helped us a great deal. We used the in-plant self-assessment for flexo printers for the health and safety assessment and environmental assessment for our certification process. We were also able to consult on different ways to do SOPs and things, and we had a really good start with our quality program. We simply enhanced some of the protocols to encompass sustainability, but FTA was a huge resource for us in this process.
And we started this years and years ago, and we didn't have anybody to go to, so we basically had to do it ourselves, and that's what we've done through the years.
Well, and I guess the one question, too, is how valuable have you found the National Environmental Health and Safety Conference?
It's been fabulous for us. I took a class from Judy there last year on sustainable management systems. It's a great place to network with your peers at other companies, get best practices, look at things from different approaches. I find it to be really valuable.
Excellent. Well, here's another question. I think this one's for you, Michelle, since you were the only one to do your carbon footprint. The question is, and I know this is a common question, so I can help chip in after you respond, but is there a standard way to calculate your carbon footprint? It seems like there's too many confusing ways to do the calculation. And, you know, what process or what protocol are you using?
I don't have the calculations in front of me. I can tell you it's a time-consuming process. There's not a set agreed-upon protocol that I'm aware of, although I did get an email from Doreen yesterday suggesting there may be one for European printers. I think that Dow Jones, Paul Jakubski at Dow Jones has an excellent presentation on this topic. And I know, Gary, you've done a lot of work. Do you have any specific recommendations for printers?
Well, yeah, there's, you know, this is a common question for those that are trying to figure out their carbon footprint, and there's two key issues here. There's the carbon footprint of the product, and then there's the carbon footprint of the process, and they're actually two separate carbon footprints. But in terms of the process carbon footprint, which is the one that is the more common one, There are 3 protocols that are out there that people follow. I know Paul uses the World Resource Institute that's in the SBDC, the Sustainable Business Development Council. That's the international protocol that a lot of folks use. But there's also here in the States, there's the Climate Registry protocol that's out there. And actually EPA has a protocol under their Environmental Partners Program. And they all pretty much agree on the first 2 steps of it. The third step is where it gets a little dicey in terms of what you consider the scope of your carbon footprint. And again, this is important too, is don't have this confused, and the whole issue of carbon footprinting gets a little confusing because, as you're well aware of, EPA instituted a mandatory greenhouse gas reporting requirement for certain sources, those who emit more than 25,000 metric equivalent tons. So those are due next year. You're to start doing your math this year. And that carbon emission, greenhouse gas emission, is just from the direct sources, whereas a carbon footprint includes what are called direct and indirect sources. So direct sources would be, things that you would burn, and there's a question here about, besides CO2 from electricity, natural gas, what else is involved in the carbon footprint? And so really what you're looking at is the direct, which is, burning the fossil fuels on site, use of refrigerants. So don't forget refrigerants have a high global warming potential. But it's also the indirect, which is your purchased electricity. And then the third phase, or the third tier, looks at employee transportation, automobiles, and that's where it really falls apart because in all the protocols it's kind of optional. What I would suggest is that those who are doing the carbon footprint calculation, make sure you define your scope and describe your scope, and then define the protocol that you're using and the development of your carbon footprint. And then, Michelle, you alluded to is that there is a movement now to develop an ISO standard for carbon footprint calculation, which I hope will bring clarity to this whole issue. So we've become involved in that process, and that's just at the very early stages. And it's going to be involvements from the different representatives from the different countries. So you just need to pay attention to that, and we'll be keeping people posted as that evolves. Okay, question on suppliers. This is a really good question. How do you identify, and let me try to paraphrase this to see if I got it. How are sustainable suppliers viewed by your buyer engineering groups? How do you recommend potential new suppliers? In other words, how do you evaluate your suppliers to see if they are in fact sustainable? Because that's obviously, we're only limited to the materials that we can bring into our facility. So how do you guys look at your suppliers, and how do you qualify them from a sustainability perspective?
Well, I guess I can start that. We talked to our suppliers. We asked them what can you bring to the table as far as sustainability is concerned. And if we can buy plates from 4 or 5 different suppliers, different manufacturers, we're going to choose the one that has environmental issues that they're dealing with. As a matter of fact, our plates are made in a plant that gets their power from a landfill. And it's one of the big reasons why we chose that plate. And we do the same thing with inks and the wash-up solutions, and we want to know what their sustainability is.
And along with Wally there, it's part of SGP that you kind of interview and talk with all of your suppliers to make sure that they're bringing you the latest and greatest in green, and that you're sourcing from green partners. So one of Modernistic's largest plastic substrate producers is a renewable energy EPA green power partner. They have a bunch of customer recycling programs where they take back dirty substrates and regrind and make more material. And they just have a huge involvement as far as green, and that they get primarily much of our business because of that.
We have a sustainability questionnaire that we send out to our vendors, and whenever we are considering a new vendor, I partner with the purchasing manager, a bunch of us do, and review various criteria, including sustainability. We do ask for verification, and so far we've had good success.
And then how do you guys detect, Michelle, obviously you've got a pretty formal process, but do you engage in conversations? How do you detect whether or not that they're really, they're putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak? They're walking the walk.
We've got long-standing relationships with these vendors. We've been with them for a number of years. Our purchasing manager will sometimes go out and audit their facilities. We'll ask them to send us their sustainability program. We'll call people on the phone and verify information. So I feel like we have a pretty comprehensive and realistic approach.
And what we do is, the first thing that has to happen is they have to send us MSDS sheets, and we have to verify the MSDS sheets. What is a criteria for what we're using. Right now, we're beta sites for a couple of different companies, but many times we'll get companies that'll say, "Hey, will you test our product? Well, it's green, it's VOC free, and things of that nature." But we still require the MSDS sheet first, and then if we find out that yes, it is, it's VOC free, but you got products in there that's going to kill your employee, well, of course we won't use it, and that has happened.
And similar to Wally, we require MSDS sheets to be on file for the different substrates and materials that we're using, so that we can verify that the materials that are in them are actually what they're touting.
All right, and I got a great question. We're running near out of the end. We've got more questions coming in, but and hopefully maybe we can answer this one quickly. Is what are the qualifications to become SGP certified?
Oh,
procedures, Gary.
I can take a stab at that if you want.
Go ahead.
I direct them to the website. So.
Yeah, I mean there is. That's what I would do. Is that the first thing I would do is suggest you go to the website www.sgppartnership.org, and on the website under the tab "Become a Sustainable Green Printer," you can find the criteria. But basically, in a short summary, you have to meet all the criteria that's identified, and it includes developing a sustainable management policy, a sustainable management program, meeting the best management practices, and then, of course, having an audit performed by a third party. And I think part of the design element to SGP, so it had maximum credibility, is that number one, it's a separate organization. It's not an association type program, although we all got together and formed it, all three of the primary trade associations, and we're supported by the Inc. Association as well. And it's independent, and you have to go through that third party audit, so that when you say you're SGP certified, it really means something. And going through the process, I think that's probably the best way to summarize that. And if anybody wants to talk more at depth and length, please feel free to give me a call, or if you're a member of SGIA or FTA, give them a call and they can go through the more details on the criteria. Here's a compliance-related question. Is there a standard way to calculate discharges to wastewater? And I don't know if anybody can handle that one, or I can take a stab at that one as well.
Go for it.
The answer is no. That one was easy. Unfortunately, when you look at discharges to wastewater, I mean, you could calculate total volume flow. Generally, that's through your purchase volume through the water company that supplies your drinking water. That'll give you a starting point if you're looking at total volume. But if you're looking at specific contaminants that may be present in the wastewater that's going out of the facility, the only really way to know that is to actually measure that. And there's different ways that you can measure the discharges from your facility, but there really isn't a good way to calculate that unless you're just looking for total volume flow out of your facility, and you can get back to the water bill. I think that pretty much exhausts us on the time. We have a couple more questions, but I think we gotta move on because this is only for 60 minutes. And let me take us into the wrap-up. A few final thoughts on sustainability. First and foremost, sustainability is not a threat. It's actually a journey with many opportunities, and I do want to stress that word journey. It's a continuous improvement process. You're never really done. There's always something to be working on. There's always something to be looking at in terms of reducing your overall environmental footprint in the three areas of the product, process, and envelope. As we heard from our panelists, it's becoming business critical. A lot of their customers are asking them for their green credentials, and actually to keep your existing customers as well as add new ones, because there is a large customer base, and we see that continuing to grow even in the relatively down economy. It's going to provide a competitive advantage both domestically as well as internationally. It is something that you can point to that creates value for your company, and it also creates value for your customer base. It sets you apart from the competition. And obviously, you want to start or expand your program. You need to research, you need to do baseline of your operation, you need to educate your management, you need to develop and implement a strategy. And I think the one thing that came through loud and clear is that each of our panelists had some really great metrics. And you really do, and I can't stress enough that part of your program is you need to start gathering those metrics, because how do you know if you're making progress, and how can you tell your story? With the successes that our panelists have had, they've got data, they've got information, they can relate what they're doing, and they can look at it from a waste reduction, from a volume perspective, as well as from a cost savings perspective. And obviously, depending on who you're talking to, whether it's management or staff, they all want to hear a different story. But cost savings, waste reductions, I mean, those are fantastic. So we'll take it from here, Bill.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gary Jones, and our panelists, Deanne Strenke, Michelle Donahue, and Wally Jones. And if you want to hear more, and obviously this is a big subject that bears a lot of attention and a lot of study, you should come to the NEHS conference. That's March 15 through 17 in Indianapolis. You can register at nehsconference.org. Thank you, everybody, and thanks, audience, for listening. We look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.